Hey everybody, Ben here from the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to Vampire Starting Rosters. We are going through all the teams available for Blood Bowl 2020, whether they're in the rulebook or the new Teams of Legend PDF that Games Workshop have dropped. Link in the video comments below. And we're looking at just what you can take for 1 million, getting ready to start your next league for Blood Bowl Season 2. And today we're going to look at a very interesting team. Now, Vampires, they've taken a bit of a kicking and they're giving it out too. So let's have a look at Vampire rosters. So it's all about the key changes for Vampires. So Bloodlust is gone, and they have replaced it with a very generic skill called Animal Savagery. Now, Animal Savagery is on some other big guys, the Rat Ogre and stuff like that. Now, what it does is very similar to Wild Animal in the old rules. So now it is basically, if you're blocking or blitzing, it's a 2+. If you're not blocking or blitzing, it's a 4+. And basically, if you fail the roll and you're not stood next to a friendly teammate, you bonehead. You lose your tackle zone, your activation's over, and that's it for that player for the turn. So in one regard, it's slightly better than Bloodlust, because I'm sure you've all played those games or heard of those games with vampires where they just run off into the crowd, or if you're running a squig team from the Secret League, you may have seen on the channel when Ian played his... Ian had his game with me with the squig team, and his squigs just bloodlusted and ran off everywhere. So slightly better than that. Now, if you are standing next to a friendly player and you fail an Animal Savagery roll, you choose a friendly model next door to your Animal Savagery player. It knocks them down to the ground, so immediately knocked down, and you roll for armor. And your opponent can choose any armor affecting skills, so Mighty Blow, Claw, that kind of thing. They can apply those. So if your vampire ends up with Mighty Blow, it's going to be using it against one of your friendly players. But if you knock down one of your friendly guys, you can go and do exactly what you'd already planned to do that turn. So it's kind of a two-edged sword. On the one side, Bonehead is worse, but you're not going to have guys running off, which is alright. And on the other hand is, if you want something to work, if this vampire needs to commit a blitz, if it needs to go for a blitz, there's no way it's going to fail. It might just punch a dude first, as long as you've got someone next to him. So it's definitely manageable, but it is massively different than Bloodlust or Bloodthirsty. It's just massively different, and it's gonna really impact on how vampire teams played. Historically, they kind of had to end their turn next to a thrall and maybe bite them. Now they've got to start their turn next to a thrall if they really want to be certain they want to do something. So it's going to be a really big change in play. The other thing is that you roll an armor that's not automatically broken, and you can bite other vampires. So it's going to be more flexible, but I think it's going to be more brutal. So the second thing to mention is Hypnotic Gaze. So the skill Hypnotic Gaze, at the end of a move, basically you can move and then you choose an enemy player in base contact with you and you roll an agility roll, -1 for each marking player except the target. Agility's a 2+ here for vampires, so you're going to be 2+ minus anybody extra to take away their tackle zone, which is okay. Now, more than all your vampires can do it every turn. The difficult thing is, in the wording of the rules, they're very much two different camps on how to read it. So Animal Savagery basically says if they make a block, a blitz action, or a special action that replaces your block action, they get +2 to the roll. Hypnotic Gaze opens up by saying this is a special action, but it doesn't say that it replaces the block action. So we are a little bit unsure as to whether Hypnotic Gaze is working on a 2+ or a 4+. So we are going to, for the purposes of this video, assume that it is literally written rules as written, and that it's a 4+ to activate when moving or passing or handing off the ball. So we built these rosters with that in mind, and we'll talk through it with that in mind. The only other thing to mention is that vampires, instead of quick passing on a 2+, are now passing on a 3+, which is pretty normal across the board, and thralls are passing 5+, so they've taken a bit of a hit there. Anyway, onwards and upwards to the rosters. So the vampire team is made up of 2 positionals. That is it. There are 2 player types. There are thrall linemen and there are vampires. Their rerolls are 70k, so basically the whole point of these rosters is to find a balance that you are comfortable with, whether it's between victims for your vampires or rerolls to make that to make everything else work better. So the thrall linemen are 40k, movement 6, strength 3, agility 3+, passing 5+, which we've already talked about, armor 8+, so they are a little bit soft, no skills, and they get general on a primary and agility and strength on secondary. So no passing access for your thralls, so no chance to build a cheeky little leader caddy there. The vampires are 0 to 6 and they're 110,000. That's right, 5k cheaper than a troll. Movement 6, strength 4, agility 2+, passing 3+, armor 9+. So these guys are really good. They are basically, you know what, there's no player type analogy. They're reasonably good at passing as far as passing goes these days, and they are very good at agility on a 2+. And they're also strength 4. Movement 6 is exactly medium, so that's fine as well. Animal savagery, we spoke about that. Hypnotic gaze and regeneration is going to mean that when a vampire goes down, either to your opponent or to a friendly vampire having a bad day and nutting him one, you're going to be able to regenerate that. Agility, general, and strength, all on your primary skills here for vampires. So you've got a huge amount of skills you can give them as you develop, which is really cool. And they get passing on a double, so if you do want to go the leader caddy route, you can do it with a vampire. Rerolls are 70k, so definitely something to balance in. So the first roster we've got for you is the 4-4-11. So that is 4 vampires, 4 rerolls, and 11 players total. Now that's important because the more vampires you get, the more chance Animal Savagery is going to deck one of your own players. And we've already said that can be a vampire, so something to bear in mind. That with armor 8+, you're going to lose 1 or 2 thralls in this game from your opponent, and at least 1 from you as well. So I'll be very cautious with this roster. On the one hand, you're going to end up with 8 or 9 players on the pitch at the end of the game. Half of those are going to be strength 4, agility 2, bad machines. So it's not the end of the world. 4 rerolls is also going to mean that you get a chance to reroll when you really need Animal Savagery to go away. So 4 rerolls are going to allow that extra once per half really bad situation, you're going to get away with it. So that's why the rerolls are so important for this team, is because that reroll is saving one of your own players, and it's saving an activation in a way. So that's why they're so important. So this roster to start a league gives you 4 vampires. The more vampires you have, the more SPPs they get. That's from passing, maybe, but it's definitely from casualties and from touchdowns. And the more SPPs they get, the quicker they get skills. Now very quickly we'll look at skills for the vampires. Pro was always touted as a very useful skill for a vampire because they got to just have a cheeky way of trying to avoid a bloodlust. It seems even more important now, and Pro got better to a 3+. So you can go dodge for a vampire with 2+ agility, really good. You can go block with strength 4, really good. You can go sidestep, which is something I also like, because if your opponent is punching you, they could be moving you away from a friendly player, away from a thrall, which could really affect your activation. So giving them sidestep is going to help them keep in base contact with a friendly player and guarantee you that activation. It also means that there will be some times where you can use sidestep to get away from a friendly player. So you can try a cheeky 2+ block, and if it goes wrong, nothing bad happens. Pro, therefore, giving you a 3+ chance to re-roll that bloodthirst, old school, to re-roll that Animal Savagery is looking like a really useful skill. And if you don't use it for that, you get a chance to 3+ re-roll a dice when you're making 2 of those to block, and you could be using it to get out of failing a 2+ dodge as well, so it could be quite useful. The thralls are really there to be meat. Now they make reasonable players. 40k, movement 6, agility 3+, strength 3. They are absolutely fine, and you will win games using your thralls. I do recommend a kick player to play that position in game. The rest of them getting block is just going to make them very, very useful. There's a couple of other skills you can look at, but I'm not too fussed about that right now. But this roster kind of gives you 4 bruisers. You will be a little light on players, but the rerolls can kind of bail you out. But if that roster leaves you feeling a bit insecure about your lineup, what you can do is you can drop a vampire and take a couple of extra thralls. So what that does is it reduces the amount of ability for your team to eat itself by 25%. So you drop one vampire and you replace it with 2 thralls. So your vampire to thrall ratio goes up massively. It also gives you one person on bench, so that when you lose a thrall to your friend or foe, you're still going to have a full lineup, and you keep your 3 rerolls. I like 4, it gives you a lot of strength. 3 is probably better, and being able to have that 1 in reserve is going to keep your team functional. And you've still got 4 rerolls, so you can make the most of the 3 vampires you've got. Having 3 does mean that you are a little bit skinny, and it is going to be down to the thralls to win the game more than your vampires, but it's going to be way more controllable. And there is a way to ramp up the consistency even more. You can go 2, 5, 12 for 9 to 70. You only get 2 vampires. You've got 10 thralls, so 1 in the bench, and 5 rerolls. We don't know entirely how the vampire team is going to play. Historically, the 2-5 was not bad because it gave you the ability to just pull off stuff with the thralls that they wouldn't normally be able to do. I think that was quite a vulnerable roster, but it will be more consistent for you, and having those 5 rerolls is not going to hurt as your team develops. If you're playing in a long league, if you're playing a forever league, this is probably the right way to do it, because every time you save up 110k, you get another vampire. You get another vampire, and you've already got 10 thralls. This is definitely an option for you if you are a little bit nervous about using the vampires, who, to be fair, are pretty great everything. I think 2 is too few, but it's worth us talking through, because actually you can start off with 5 rerolls and 12 players and just add a vampire every 3 to 4 games. If you're playing in a long league, if you're playing a 16 game season, this is probably not a bad place to go. I prefer the 3 or 4 vampire builds myself, but if you want to be hyper cautious, this is the kind of roster you can build. Or you can simply lean into the Savagery. So the great thing about Savagery is you're not going to lose players immediately. So old school vampires used to just run off. This time they murder each other on the pitch. Now, they're armor 9+. And you've got to break armor and then injure them. And then they've got regeneration. That's pretty resilient. Why not have 6? So you can fit all 6 vampires with 5 thralls for 11, and you can go 6 to 11 build, just 2 rerolls. This is going to be an absolute disaster. However, if you roll well, it's going to be incredibly good. And then all you have to do is replace the thralls and save up for rerolls. So if you're playing cautiously, or you're playing carefully, or you actually want to do well, this is probably a bad idea. But we've had a look at ogres before, and we've looked at the 6 ogre no reroll build, and it's just so much fun. I've run vampires with 6 vampires no rerolls in the olden times, and it was a lot of fun. Nowadays, I think it's going to be even better. They are savage. They are going to injure each other, but it's not straight through armor. And if that doesn't happen, the vampires are not straight gone. So there is a chance that actually playing all of your vampires early to get that skill up, to get possibly pro or dodge to save you on rerolls, and just save up for other rerolls, this could be a really strong front. There is probably a bit of a middle ground, but if you want to go vampires and you want to really experience animal savagery, 6-2, it's going to be a very entertaining season. It's going to be way up there on the casualties. They just might not all be yours. Okay, so you've decided whether or not you are going to be a cautious vampire coach or just a full-on savage. So the cool thing about the vampire team is you've got a bit of flexibility with miniatures, because you've only got the 2 different positionals. So realistically, if you want to run a team like vampires, you can use anything that looks strength 4 and anything that looks strength 3. As long as you've got up to 6 of one and up to 10 of the other, it's going to be absolutely fine. So you could convert chaos blockers into vampires, and then use human linemen, or just human players really, as your vampire roster, as your thralls. Another cool conversion opportunity is to use the Stormcast from Age of Sigmar with some head swaps. They make very good vampires. And then again, you can just use linemen from any team of Blood Bowl really to kind of give you your thrall effect. So there's a lot of flexibility there. Because the way the team plays now, it doesn't exactly line up with I want to suck your blood. It is just a rage thing. So Chaos Demons actually fit into this really well. So get some bloodletters or something. They're your vampires, and they're just very angry things. Again, that works brilliantly. However, if you want to go and buy a team, there are plenty out there that you can pick up. The one we've got to feature here is the Willy Miniatures vampire team. €79.95 at the moment, and you get 10 thralls and 6 vampires. So no matter what roster you want to build, unless you want to go 12 thralls, you are going to be covered with this team. And they are pretty lovely models. I think someone from our local group has got this team with the expansion pack, possibly. Anyway, Willy Miniatures do great stuff. So Willy Miniatures vampire team is definitely one to have a look at if you want to run vampires in your next league. But if you're happy to wait a little bit longer, Punga Miniatures have just finished, I don't know, I finished a little while ago, a Kickstarter, and they're going to start dispatching this either in... No, Vortice is December and Punga is February. So going into next year, this team will start to become available. Punga Miniatures do incredibly lovely models. The Pirates is just gorgeous, and we actually helped name one of the star players of this as well, which is really cool. So the Punga Miniatures team is going to land, and knowing their prices, it's going to be about the same price, about €80, which is very standard for a third-party team these days. However, Punga Miniatures are not standard in the quality of sculpts and casts. They are significantly above standard. So when the Punga Miniatures model lands, that team is going to be absolutely lush. So if you can wait till next year, might not be a bad idea. So that's it from me on the vampire team. It is a different team than it used to be, and I think if they'd reskinned it almost any way, it might be similar but different. The animal savagery is going to be interesting. It's going to feel better some games. It's going to feel worse in others. Now, the one hope for vampire coaches is that there is an FAQ that says hypnogaze causes animal savagery to work on a 2+ rather than a 4+. If that is the case, then the vampire team gets much better. In fact, in that situation, I would argue that it was better than it was before, because you can't have a vampire run away. It just loses its tackle zones. As it is now, it's going to be a very difficult to use team. And I think you're genuinely going to feel like you are working against your own players to stop them from murdering each other. However, if you can work it off, you get a bunch of strength 4, agility 2+ guys, and that can be really unstoppable for your opponents. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Do let me know what you think about the vampires, especially that little rules query that the internet can't seem to agree on. Imagine that. And we're going to disappear now, and I will see you again soon for more Blood Bowl content. Thanks very much.